Hi, Ms. Ingfield.
Hi.
Thank you so much for making time to meet with me today. I
Okay.
appreciate you and for all of your hard work and intentionality in differentiating these lesson plans for your scholars as well. Can we start with GLOWs? What are some things that you're proud of that you think you did well?
Grows would be GLOWs, right? Isn't it what it's
GLOW.
called? A GLOW would be the scholars being intentional with using gisting.
Yep.
That would be one because that was a big piece asking questions, but I was like, now you have to make it live on paper. So that would be one.
Annotating on paper as well. And as you were lesson planning, what was going through your mind when you were thinking about differentiating for your scholars?
What was going through my mind was thinking about the different levels of the scholars and what will be their areas of growth. So I have certain scholars like we met before, like looking at the DIBELS data and all the data, looking at the things. So we have some scholars that may be oral learners, some scholars that we have to create those sentence stems to kind of help them get there. And then we have those scholars that are on grade level and it's pretty much making them do things independently versus giving them the stems because they're able to do it.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. So thinking a lot about, it sounds like readiness. And I could see a lot of evidence of that in your lesson plans as well. I appreciated, I think some GLOWs for this plan in particular. This was lesson 5 in Unit 4. Also, the way you identified the figurative language, which we know can be a barrier for our English language learners and our scholars who are not yet reading on grade level. And I also appreciated your intentional connecting back to background information, since this is a historical nonfiction text. And that's something that I want to just really bring your attention to, is you did the readiness, but you also brought in their real life, which is a differentiation strategy as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. And so when we think about, like, I'll say we have some scholars who may have experienced some discrimination in their lives, or some sort of racism or sexism or ableism. And we have some who haven't, right? Because they're young. And so bringing in your own experiences and talking about yourself as a scholar and connecting that with Ernest as a scholar in the text, and then allowing scholars to make those connections too, I thought was really strong. Use of differentiation strategies as well.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah. Now, was there anything that you feel like you still had a question about, or that you were less confident in, like a grow for yourself?
I think because of the text, I was a little bit, and I think it just goes based upon whatever the lesson may be. And because this was on civil rights, and you know, I have that social studies brain, it was kind of easy for me to kind of break it down. But I think the area of growth would be, if I had to say the push, it was kind of disconnected here about the word paratroopers, because I'm not even gonna lie, like even myself, I had to think about, like, what does that mean? And so I guess, should this be something that I front load the scholars with at the beginning? Like, hey, you're gonna see this particular word.
That's a really good question. That actually, I can answer that one really quickly.
Okay.
Is it a word that they will need to know and apply for the rest of the text or the rest of the unit?
No.
Okay, so then no. You can teach it in the moment when it comes up.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's a word they'll need to know, then we'll use our vocabulary routine to teach it up front.
Okay.
Okay. So I had a similar thought, but I am looking at at the key questions. And I am looking at the key question around trench warfare. I think it's number 3.
Yes, I think I had that. Yeah. Like, how do you?
Yep. He describes it as going from tranquil to trench warfare. According to Ernest, why did conditions in the school go from being tranquil to trench warfare? And great job pulling out my pages again, all out of order. The additional supports in there. I want to think about, so as I said before, you've done a great job differentiating for readiness. Now I want to think about how we could differentiate for learning preferences. I saw some evidence of that with like using different color highlighters for visual learners. And I want to just go a little deeper.
Okay.
If that's okay? Yeah. So with that question in mind, let me ask you this.
Okay.
How many of your scholars will be able to connect to trench warfare that he's using as figurative language here?
They were not, and I probably should have pulled that out. They will relate trenches to something else, just because of songs and lyrics, and you know, obviously they would know when they see the word warfare has something to do with someone with guns, right? Okay. But it being together, I don't know with that question, and I probably should have thought about that one. I did not even. Yeah.
Well, and what I want to talk about is not just this specific question, but a strategy that can also help with some vocabulary words. Is I found a 1 minute video. It's actually 1 minute and 44 seconds. We're gonna watch a part of it. Okay. And the thinking job that I want you to keep in mind is, how is trench warfare similar and different to the integration of Little Rock High?
Okay, thank you.
So we're looking for similarities and differences between trench warfare and the integration of Little Rock. Okay. All right, here we go. I'm gonna start it right here. We won't watch the whole thing, but I'll give you enough to get an idea.
World War I is famous for the use of trench warfare. Trenches were used from Gallipoli to the Western Front. They were a series of ditches hand-dug into the ground to protect the soldiers from enemy bullets and artillery. Soldiers would fight, eat, and sleep in the trenches. No man's land between the trenches was the most deadly place to be. Aside from the typical threats of war, soldiers were also dying from the miserable conditions. Unwashed men and dead bodies were a shock to soldiers arriving for the first time. Lice, ticks, and flies were a major problem, causing never-ending itches and spreading trench fever. Millions of rats lived in the trenches, feeding on the scraps of war. Some grew to be the size of cats. Standing in the wet, muddy conditions on the Western Front caused trench foot, which could lead to amputations. The New Zealand soldiers lived on a grueling diet of corned beef, jam, and stew, topped off with hard, dry biscuits. At Gallipoli, the Anzacs had few grenades, so they turned their empty jam tins into homemade bombs. During the war, a new, deadly weapon was deployed: poison gas. Soldiers would cover their faces with rags soaked in urine until gas masks were developed to give them better protection.
We're going to pause it there. I'll give you another 30 seconds just to finish up your thoughts. So what did you notice as some similarities and differences?
All right, so I'm gonna go with the differences. The differences that I noticed between the two in the video, and more so from a standpoint of war standpoint, talk about the injuries, the different diseases that was caused by it. Right. But the similarities between both was pretty much, I think, of like from a mental state, a mental standpoint. Words that stuck out was words like miserable, protection, having to just make do. That's what happened between both in the video. I'm sorry, and in Ernest, just making sure, like, you know, they felt miserable when they were going through having to do it, but they had to make do. They had to do it. Right. And then like having that protection. As far as how the soldiers had to come in and protect them as they were walking in, you know, so all of that, it was similarities there, but it was more so from a mental standpoint than what's literally happened. And that goes, I guess, with the literal meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because this exit ticket was going to ask them about a figurative language example. Now, the last question that I would ask is, why do we think Ernest uses the word trench warfare instead of just saying it was really difficult or we were miserable?
I think because he's showing his perspective, the author, this is him telling his perspective. It just gives it more color for you to really understand what's happening. Because one person could say something is difficult, and my difficult and your difficult could be two different things.
Yes.
But when you say trench warfare, you're thinking about the mental, warfare they could be dealing with in their mind, similar to soldiers on the battlefield. So,
Yep. And just to add on, because I think you pretty much said everything, it's also shorter. Because in order to really describe how we suffered and how it was dangerous and we had to do whatever we could and we had to do protection and we were drained and we, would take paragraphs and paragraphs.
Right.
If you say trench warfare, you get a picture.
Yeah, automatic.
Right. As well as his perspective, like you said. Someone else might describe it differently. So let's step back. Thank you for engaging in that as a scholar with me.
Okay.
How would an activity like that support scholars with different learning styles? I'm not thinking just about readiness, because the video helps with vocabulary and so on and so forth, but how do we support different learning styles?
In that moment with that question, we don't want to think about the video. I made like an organizer, kind of a graphic organizer. Able to do maybe a call and response type of deal. No, that's not differentiating though.
It is.
Is it?
So we talked about it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were able to create your own graphic organizer, which is voice and choice.
Okay.
Right? I didn't tell you to create a graphic organizer, but I did use words that would clue our scholars in to say, I probably need to do either a T-chart or a Venn diagram. Right. They know similarities and differences. We had opportunities to write and talk about it. So we've got the written and the oral. And then what about for visual learners? This one's easy. I'm just asking it so we stamp it.
A video.
Yeah, exactly. An audio video experience for both visual and auditory learners.
Okay.
The video also has sound effects. It had example images, a lot more than me explaining.
It'll allow you to get that feeling too with the video if you were visual.
Exactly. What I would love for you to think about in your next lesson plan is how are we bringing in different modalities? Okay. What do you think of when I say that?
How to reach different learners. So how to front load it. So I think about maybe a storybook, maybe I don't want to say max your vocabulary, a video, an audio, just different ways that the scholars could see the text in different ways. I could say that, but Yeah,
absolutely. Based on that and this conversation that we've had, what do you think your next step is going to be?
My next step will be creating different modalities for my next lesson, and thinking a little bit deeper when it comes to it. How would I do it for the scholars?
Absolutely. And you already do that, and I think because we use Fish Tank, it doesn't tell you how to teach the question. It just gives you the question. It has some little ideas, but that's where your creativity comes in and your knowledge of your scholars.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I think big part about it is knowing your scholars and like you helping me knowing how to pull the data, look at the data, and like being very data aligned. So this is the data. So I should already go in mind like these level scholars will need this. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a good next step. So we're going to look. So what I will do is in your next lesson plan, I'm going to zoom straight to your key questions and look for the modalities there because I'm already seeing it in the way you do your exit ticket and the way you do your launch.
Okay.
So next week I'll look for it in your key questions.
Okay.
Awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.